Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well and welcome into the studio. Have an exciting new tutorial today where we're going to cover mixing rap vocals using only stock plugins in Logic Pro. It has been a long time since I've done a video with just stock plugins in Logic, and so I thought it would be fun to show you some of the new plugins that we have available.
Nothing left. I got that truth around my waist, breastplate made to measure. Now I'm right with God, swift on my feet with that message, bringing peace, breaking chains, shield of faith. But we are web as weaponry, and we're prepared as we need to be. Nature is violent, and inside of its eye, a calm silence. And deep in its iris, you find trauma and pain, replaying over and over.
I'm also going to show you some different techniques that I haven't covered on the channel. So maybe you've been watching some other tutorials on YouTube and you still feel like your rap vocals are lacking in the mix department. I can guarantee you that these techniques and this approach is going to help you level up and accelerate that for you. Before we dive into the session, I want to tell you about this tutorial's sponsor, which is McDSP audio plugins. Now, McDSP has been around for a very long time. As a matter of fact, one of the first third-party plugins that I bought was the McDSP analog channel. You've seen it in many of my videos. They now have a new plugin called Reverb, which is based off of another one of my favorite one of their plugins, Box, which emulates things like old cell phones and different speakers, old radios, walkie-talkies, television speakers. A lot of unique sounds there that we can now run through the new Reverb module. So you're going to get some reverb sounds that you will not find anywhere else. Also, just to note, McDSP plugins no longer require an iLock USB dongle, which means hopefully we're one step closer to completely getting rid of those USB dongles. You can take all of these plugins for a fully functional 14-day test drive. I'm going to put a link to McDSP plugins in the description below. And with that, let's dive into the tutorial. All right, so we have all of our rap vocals here pulled down to 0. And the first thing we want to do is I just want to bring up the lead and get that essential balance with our instrumental right. And then we can start building with the backing box, with the dub box. We'll process all those separately.
Prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted.
We're not aiming for perfection at this point. We just want to get a nice level and a nice balance with that lead up front. And then we're going to bring in the backing layers behind it. If you're curious about how we recorded it, these are not the same take as this lead vox layer. So just being clear, you don't want to copy and paste to try to get a thicker vocal. These are different takes, which is going to give us a whole different blend. And it's going to give us a different thickness. Then again, if you were to just copy this, you're going to run into phasing issues if you're trying to like shift things. And I've seen a lot of different techniques out there. Just record a few different takes. It's going to be helpful also if you needed to comp the performance, meaning if you needed to put together different takes, somebody messed up. It's just good practice to have some, and then you can use the other layers as backups.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus.
I don't necessarily want to hear those backing layers super obviously, but I do want to get a little bit of a thicker tone and a little bit more richness just with the backing layers there. It's going to help it cut through the mix.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains.
So let's bring up the dubs. These could be called doubles or punches sometimes, but they're just words of emphasis. And the way that I generally record with artists is we will wide pan things. You've heard me talk about this on the channel if you followed along, but it gives us a nice stereo spread, a little more exciting listening experience for these words of emphasis. So we'll just pan them to like 50 on each side and bring them up.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ.
All right, so pretty good essential balance here on the verse. For the time being, I am going to mute those backing layers. We'll just keep those in the back pocket. We're going to bring them back and process them. But we want to get this lead vocal chain dialed in. This is where the fun starts. We're going to start throwing in some plugins and some different techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and route this to a bus. Now, a lot of you may not be familiar with busing and auxing. But for now, the easiest way to understand this is just we're going to send this to an aux and put our vocal chain on it so that we can reutilize this on the first verse. This is actually the second verse in the song. So we're going to use the same processing on the first verse. And I'll show you how setting up this aux is going to save us a tremendous amount of time and resources in our session, because we're not going to have to use these effects on each individual track or on even each individual verse. We'll just process both of those through this chain. First plugin we're going to reach for is the linear phase EQ. We want to get a core tone and character and remove some of the frequencies that we just don't want to process and send through compression and all that other stuff first. Why am I using a linear phase EQ? Simply because a linear phase EQ is going to give us a cleaner result in terms of any kind of boost that we may make here versus just the channel EQ. It has some coloration, not as clean a result. So if you're not recording through it and you're not worried about delay or latency, which is, you'll be able to audibly hear if you're recording through the linear phase EQ. In mixing and mastering, we'd rather use the linear phase. It's just going to be a cleaner result. I'm going to roll off some low end first, and be careful with this. In the past, sometimes I've gone above 120, 140. I think that can be a little extreme. I like a little bit thicker vocal now. I think sounds change, styles change. I'm going more towards 60 to 80 these days.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition.
So you see I just adjusted the slope. We want it to be pretty steep, so I'm at a 36 dB slope, and then we just set it to 75. You go much higher than that, can start to thin out the vocal. I'd rather it be a little thicker here. I'm going to cut a little bit of lows here between 100 and 200.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be something that he cannot question, that he cannot see, beginning to breathe a life of its own.
I cut off a little bit more low end, a little bit here in that 500 range, and then we're boosting slightly at like 1.5K. It's just going to give us a bit more presence. I did this handy little low pass on the top end. It's just going to cut off some of the kind of whistly, unpleasant digital top end that we have here, and I just set it to 15, and we have a very gentle 12 dB slope roll off, and then I'm just boosting here in this like 6 to 10 range to give us a bit more detail and presence. So let's hear it with and without.
Every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress.
All right, now we're going to load up a newer plugin here in Logic. It's called ChromaGlow, and it specializes in subtle saturation. You could get a little more extreme with it. We're going to use it subtly. If you want to model like a tube pre or an analog preamp, different retro sorts of sounds. If you've got an overly digital sound, which a lot of time that's what we're dealing with here in the DAW, the modern DAW, this is just going to give you a different character. Now, I have experimented a lot with ChromaGlow, And I've just found that using this more on the subtle side rather than cranking this drive is going to give you much better results, especially on vocals.
Every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be something that he cannot question, that he cannot see.
Let me just solo that for you.
Every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord.
A little bit more body, a little bit more presence. And as you can see, turning that mix back to 30%, the drive's only at 15. A little bit of ChromaGlow goes a long way. Now we're going to dive into the first compressor. Yes, that's right. We're going to use multiple compressors. We may even use 3 compressors today. I don't know. We'll see if we're getting a little crazy. You've seen me use 2. Quick tip for you, the compressors in Logic do not like to be pushed. So we have a way of maneuvering that and sort of finessing the results with the compressors in Logic, because we're not going to necessarily push one really hard. We're going to lightly dial in compression on a few different ones so that we can get the sonic result that we want. I really like this Studio VCA as a starting point. It's pretty fast, which is great for rap vocals. I'm going to turn the ratio up to 3.5 to 1, and we'll dial back the threshold to taste, but just keep an eye on this meter and we can see how much gain reduction or attenuation that we're having. What may be confusing to a lot of you is as we're applying compression, it's going to get quieter. The signal is going to get quieter. So we need to use what is called makeup gain, or you could use this auto gain control to make up for the gain reduction. But I would strongly recommend to start getting comfortable with setting the makeup gain yourself. Let's try this out for ourselves and listen closely.
These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be something that he cannot question, that he cannot see, beginning to breathe a life of its own. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord.
So we'll keep it very light for the time being, but you see I just adjusted the attack, still pretty fast, and then the release is at 220 milliseconds. So let's just put that one away for now. And we're going to use another compressor. And just for the example, I don't know if you all are aware of this, but this plugin Fat Effects has a lot of different really cool effects built into it, including some of those saturation and distortion units are right here in the distortion section of Fat Effects. So just something to keep in your toolbox. But we're going to turn off everything except for the compressor, and we're going to use one of the compressors here. We're going to follow that fast compressor with a slower opto compressor. So if you're not familiar with what an opto compressor is, a little bit more of a glued sound, but it's also very smooth.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains, put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ.
Bringing that fader down just slightly, but I wanted to show this to you because this does have a makeup gain behavior that's a little bit easier to use. If you're not quite as comfortable, you might want to start with this. And again, you could use the Studio FET compressor that we use first. Maybe just try it out in here. I like having a little bit more control. How about we do some parallel compression or some New York style compression here? In order to do that, all we need to do is select our send here on the mixer, and we're going to just route this down to bus 2. And we'll just call this parallel comp. And we're going to dial in another compressor here, just the Logic compressor. And for this one, we're going to use this studio FET option. We're going to intentionally hit this compressor much harder than the compressors on the main chain here. So go ahead and set that send to 0. And if you click option click, it will just go ahead and send that at 0 or 100% wetness to our parallel comp chain. We'll solo it so we can listen.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ.
And I also turn on this soft distortion control because we want to get a little bit of color. It's going to sound a little crunchy on its own, I know, but bear with me. Watch what this does tonally once we mix it back in with the lead. So we're going to bring this fader down now.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ. Bring us back to life. Bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus. They know Paul. I hope they know my name.
Brings a lot more attention to the vocal in the mix and gives us more of a pleasant, warm body. Now we're going to jump into additive EQ. So with our linear phase EQ, this was more reduction. We've got a slight boost here in the top end and in the mids, but we're going to save an EQ with a little bit more character to do our main boost. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and dial in the vintage EQ collection. There's some really good EQs in here. The console EQ emulates more of like a Neve style. The graphic EQ is what I would say is more like an API if you're familiar with the hardware. But I'm going to turn off the drive section. We're already driving with ChromaGlow, so we don't want to use that here. And I'm going to tune this so that we get the top end closer to like 20K. And this is going to give us more of that analog air, something like an Avalon. You've heard that sort of really nice, crisp air.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling
A little bit of brightness here at 10. Very important to note with the additive EQ section of your chains is this is very dependent on the microphone that you're using. Now we used a Warm Audio, I believe it was the 87 Junior SE, and that's got a brighter tone, more like a U87. So I'm not doing a ton of top end boosting. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I first started mixing rap vocals was thinking that I needed to boost that mic to get as much detail every time. If you're using a microphone like the 87 that's already got a lot of that brightness, you're not going to need to do that much boosting. You're going to turn that vocal into a very brittle, sort of glassy sounding signal. I mean, if we had used this mic, which is the Shure SM7DB or the SM7B, this mic requires a lot more boost. I'm actually boosting it by like 5 or 6 dB on my preamp right now at 12K because it doesn't have a lot of detail. So if I turn that off, you can hear it gets a little bit more woolly, but I just like to add a little bit of that detail to it. So since we brought out some of the Sibilance, we're going to dial in the all new de-esser 2. This is a much improved de-esser here for Logic users to the original de-esser, which was kind of useless in my opinion. This is much better. So first thing I'm going to do is just set this to absolute. If it's on relative, it basically just means that you don't necessarily need to worry about where you're setting the threshold as much, but I want to dial this in quite precisely. So I'm going to set it to absolute. We'll bring it to 0. I'm going to turn the max reduction down. We do not want it reducing over about 6 dB because we will start to get lispy. And finally, we're going to change the range to wide.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan. On the high seas of life, I kept letting water in. Couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ. Bring us back to life. Bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus. They know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body...
All right, now let's get into something really fun in Logic, which is reverb. And the reverbs in Logic are actually quite good, even compared to some of the best third-party reverbs that I own. Space Designer, the new QRS reverb, they're very, very good. So let's just pull up that new QRS, or the Quantec Room Simulator. And let's give this one a go, shall we? So I'm going to go ahead and just, again, control click this to send this 100% wet down here. Obviously, it's going to sound like a washy mess at this point.
Life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas.
We don't want to do that. What I try to do initially is imagine that this artist is performing on a stage to me. This is just as a starting point, okay? So think about this rapper. He's on stage. What does that stage sound like? What does that room sound like to me? Sitting here in my listening position, what is that like? Well, obviously,
life, I had to change it up and take the...
That's so big and unnatural sounding that that's not going to work, right? So we want to turn that down. And usually for rap, I'm somewhere in the 800 millisecond to like a second. And there's no rules, but that's usually a starting point for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just dial that in. And we're keeping this up so that we can hear the character of the reverb first. But we're also going to turn the room size down.
Life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning,
So that's starting to sound to me a little more natural and like that stage perspective. Now we can bring the volume back.
Life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer a petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life.
It's not bad. Now, taking this a step further, let's dial in a compressor that's going to effectively duck the reverb, which means we're going to get the character of the reverb, but you never have to worry about that reverb washing out our vocal in the mix. Let me show you how this works. There's this sidechain menu up here on your compressor. We're going to click that, and we're going to go down here to our bus menu, and this is where we're selecting this bus 1, which is where our lead vox is routed, and any of the other vocals that we route to that. So we're going to click that, and then we're going to start to get gain reduction, set this to a pretty high ratio, and then as we pull the threshold, we'll see this start to duck.
Life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer a petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life.
We keep the attack time fast, the release time a little slower, and that gives us that very accurate ducking effect. Now, finally, in the context of the mix, I'm going to EQ it. So I just want to remove some of the lows and some of the highs from the signal altogether. And I find it's just more flexible to use a channel EQ. There's a technique called the Abbey Road reverb technique. If you're not familiar, it's basically just saying that we're going to roll off everything below 610K, but I'm going to tweak this a little bit. We're probably going to go a little higher and a little lower.
Life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains. Put every thought in submission, every prayer a petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul. I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress.
Zooming out from the technical side of building the chain, let's get creative, shall we? So on this little part right here, we've got some sort of spaces that maybe I want to do a delay throw.
Tory sacred, my body a temple, my mind is a fortress. A dwelling place for the Lord, so know this.
Know this. So I want to fill those spaces in. So let me show you how we will set this up. I'm going to pull up the mixer. We're going to go to lead vox. We're going to send to another bus. We'll go to bus 4. Let me go ahead and label this is our lead verb. And then this is going to be our delay throw. And we're going to pull up the tape delay. Now, if we right click and click create channel, then we can pull up this automation lane. And now we're just going to throw this with my mouse. I'm just going to click it in here.
Temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be.
In order to record those movements, we need to set our automation here to, in this case, latch, which means I'm going to make a movement and it will record those things.
Temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be something that he...
So it does not need to be perfect right now. This is sort of like a rough sketch. You're kind of performing the throw and then we're going to perfect it.
Temple, my mind is a fortress, temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling.
So we'll drag this one out a little bit.
Temple, my mind is a fortress, the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be.
So that's pretty cool. Let's adjust the tone a little bit.
The Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be. The Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be something that he cannot.
And then on top of that, I'm going to add a reverb, one of the best convolution reverbs, period. And it comes with Logic, which is pretty crazy. Let's do something big and fun here, shall we?
The Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be. My body a temple, my mind is a fortress, a dwelling place for the Lord, so know this. There's a fire within and beginning to be something that he cannot question, that he cannot see, beginning to breathe a life of its own.
Now, remember I told you that these buses and oxes are going to save us a lot of time in processing. Let me show you how, because now we're going to process our backing layers and our dubs. Let's start with the backing layers first. So we're just going to route these to a new bus, and we'll call these backing Vox. Now you could process these a little bit differently, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to copy the chain that we just built for the leads, and then we're just going to paste them here. We'll take off the parallel compression and the reverb. I don't think we're going to need these for these backing layers.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains, put every thought in submission.
So we'll just tuck those in, and I'm going to do the same thing with the dubs. We're just going to route those to a new aux, and we'll call these dub. Copy that same one over here, and we'll blend this in.
My prayer life, I had to change it up and take the war to Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Now instead of feeling like I'm drowning, I keep moving mountains, put every thought in submission, every prayer petition to bring us back to Christ, bring us back to life, bring us back to Christ. These demons know Jesus, they know Paul, I hope they know my name.
Now when we go back to the first verse, all I really need to do is balance this, and we've already built a vocal chain that's going to work.
Got nothing left. I got that truth around my waist, breastplate made to measure. Now I'm right with God, swift on my feet with that message, bringing peace, breaking chains, shield of faith. Devil's arrows have no claim. But we our web is weaponry, and we're prepared as we need to be. Nature is violent, and inside of its eye, a calm silence, and deep in its got nothing left. I got that truth around my waist, breastplate made to measure. Now I'm right with God, swift on my feet with that message, bringing peace, breaking chains, shield of faith.
And now I'm just routing the first verse to the chains that we already built for the second verse. So we're just going to select these, going into backing Vox, and then finally these are going to the dub. And then these layers, we might do something a little fun with these. I'll show you some effects in Logic, but let's just take a listen now with our chain.
Got nothing left. I got that truth around my waist, breastplate made to measure. Now I'm right with God, swift on my feet with that message, bringing peace, breaking chains, shield of faith. Devil's arrows have no claim. But we our web is weaponry, and we're prepared as we need to be. Nature is violent, and inside of its eye, a calm silence. And deep in its iris, you find trauma and pain, replaying over and over again. Over and over again. Sometimes I can't shake it, that's why I assemble this ensemble, like rays through the shadows.
Well, that was easy. Let's jump over to the second verse, make sure everything's correlating here.
Man of war, but the truth I seek requires me to be Satan on the high seas of life. I kept letting water in, couldn't bail the sin out fast enough. Over over and over again. Sometimes I can't shake it, that's why I assemble this ensemble. Like rays through the shadows and battles you face. And this battle lies with the flesh. Jesus, they know Paul, I hope they know my name too. If not, get acquainted. This territory sacred, my body a temple.
Sounds pretty good to me. So hopefully that demonstrates to you, once we set up some of these auxes and chains that can be reused, you're going to save yourself a ton of time. Now, just for fun, let's do an effect on these chops here. If I bring these up.
Devil's arrows have no claim,
The idea was that we were going to kind of chop and screw these. And so I just had Zach sort of record these in a separate take.
Devil's arrows have no claim,
So we'll just route those to the backing or the dub, either one. The dub will be fine.
Devil's arrows have no claim,
There are some interesting effect plugins. There's this vocal transformer. They haven't updated the interface on all of the plugins in Logic. I'd say if there is a complaint I have, it's that some of them still look like they were made in 1989. But other than that, it is an interesting plugin. Let's see what we can do.
Devil's arrows have no claim, Devil's arrows have no claim, Devil's arrows have no claim. Devil's arrows have no claim,
So dropping that down sounds kind of interesting. Let's see.
Devil's arrows have no claim,
Breaking chains, shield of faith. Devil's arrows have no claim.
Devil's arrows have no claim,
But we are web as weaponry, and we're prepared as we need to be. Nature is violent, and inside of its eye, a calm silence. And deep in its iris, you find trauma and pain, replaying over and over again. Over and over again. Sometimes I can't shake it, that's why I assemble this ensemble. Like rays through the shadows and battles you face. And this battle lies with the flesh. I'm no man of war, but the truth I seek requires me to be ready for battle. Ready for battle, go.
All right, y'all, so there you have it. Mixing rap vocals using only stock plugins here in Logic Pro. Whoever told you that the stock plugins in Logic Pro weren't capable, show them this video, and better yet, let them listen to your songs after you apply these techniques and the approach that we covered in the video. I think you're going to surprise some folks, so I hope this was helpful for you. Maybe we could cover mixing the hook or the chorus vocals if you all would like a part 2. If that's of interest to you, leave a comment below. Let me know. Stay blessed out here, y'all. I know it's crazy times to be alive, but hopefully you are still having fun making music and being creative and expressing yourself. That is very, very important right now. I appreciate each and every one of you for the continued support and just checking in on the channel and being in the studio, hanging out with me. It's been a lot of fun. We'll see you in the next one.